that means that you're on the food side, not on the pharmacy side.
Leo.
That's always entertaining. Oh my gosh, look at all the people on this call. Yikes.
Mhm.
Right, we perhaps ready to get started?
Yep, let's start.
All right, so I know our internal people can hear me. If somebody out there in the external environment can give me a thumbs
We
up.
can hear you too.
All right, great. Thank you. Thank you. As good as we are at this stuff now, it's still floating around. So, good morning, everybody. Thank you. My name is Zach Trogdon. I'm the acting director here at DRPT, as well as the chief of public transportation. Just quick remarks. We were talking about that this thing can take a solid hour, so we want to get going. I just want to start with some thanks. Thank you to our staff that has put this together. Thank you to all of you that are attending. We're up above 70 or 80 attendees now, and this is all about setting you all up for success. I mean, it's still a challenging environment out there with economic conditions, just with the pace of change, with staffing challenges and everything else. So we hope this time can set you up for success. I mean, it's our first year using web grants to administer grants, our new platform. So we're going to talk about that some. So again, thank you to everybody involved for this time, and we think it'll be very productive for you, and we're certainly there as we move along through this year to answer questions as well. So thank you to everybody, and have a great time. We look forward to working with you all as we go forward this year. All right, so Sarah is going to get some housekeeping items and get everything going. And again, thank you to everybody.
Thank you, Zach. We'll start off with some basic webinar logistics. All participants are in listen-only mode. We have numerous question breaks planned throughout the webinar, so you have an opportunity to ask questions. To ask a question, please use the raise hand function. There should be a button with a hand that says raise at the top right-hand corner of your Teams window. Jayla Parker, our moderator, will identify you and unmute your mic. You're also welcome to submit questions via chat. And this webinar is being recorded, and we'll post the recording on our YouTube page later. 3 reference documents will be useful to you as you administer your FY25 grants. Next slide, please. The first is this webinar and slide deck. The webinar and slide deck will be emailed after today's presentation. We're going to be covering a lot of helpful info, as Zach said, and you may want to go back to key points or slides at a later date. The second is DRPT's Grant Administration Procedures Manual, or the Purple Book. If you have questions about how to administer your grants, this is your first step. This guidebook is updated annually, and we'll be referring to the Purple Book throughout today's webinar. The third is DRPT's Grant Application Manual, or the Blue Book, which has information on applying for grants. Our agenda for today is we're going to be starting off getting feedback from you on web grants. After hearing from you, we'll then discuss grant administration, asset management, and commuter assistance program performance data requirements. We'll then provide updates on transit strategic plans, procurement, communications, and engineering. After that, we'll wrap up and provide an outlook on some next steps. So before we get into all the updates from the DRPT side, we wanted to provide you all with an opportunity to give us some web grants feedback. Since December of last year, many of you have been asking a lot of questions and providing really good feedback on how to use the web grants platform. Next slide, please. We now have roughly 7 months of web grants under our belt, including 1 grant application cycle. DRPT staff have come up with 3 kind of general topic areas to talk about, but don't feel restricted by these. I think they're generic enough to fit most feedback. The goal of this discussion is not to troubleshoot issues specific to a single user. So if you're having trouble accessing web grants or completing a specific task, please check in with your program manager. Before we hear from you, I do want to highlight that we are working on feedback that we've received so far. One big one that we heard from multiple grantees was being able to see the state and local match percentages and budget. We're actually able to see that on our internal view, and we're working on making that visible externally as well. So please speak up and keep your comments as concise as possible, since we do have a lot to cover today as well. So we'll go to the next slide and we'll talk about first claims. The claims process via web grants. So here's some ideas we can kind of talk about. Process for submission, navigation of the system, completing forms, uploading attachments, any issues or recommendations you have for negotiating claims if a program manager needs more information, or to confirm an allowable cost or amount, or the process for withdrawing and resubmitting a claim. We're looking for things that work well, areas for improvement, or a future enhancement idea that you might have. So I'll go ahead and open it up now to you all if you have any feedback on claims.
Hello. Yeah, this is Joe Bonanno with Ride Solutions, West Piedmont Planning District Commission. Well, the web grants has been great for submitting the applications, but for claims, it's been really bad. I've had to work with Kathy multiple times to upload quarterly reports because it's just not intuitive at all. It needs some improvement.
Okay. Even any specific, or maybe we could talk with Kathy about some specific.
Yeah, the let's see. Oh, the upload button was never, it's really hard to find, or it's just not there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So navigating the system is not intuitive, it sounds like.
Yeah, no.
Okay, that's good to know.
Mhm.
Anything else? Anyone else? All right, I'm seeing in the chat. Oh, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I had my hand raised. This is Brittany at MVTC. I have 2 questions. One thing is it possible to have the system updated to show the remaining state balance? Because in OGA, when you would upload a reimbursement request, it would show like the remaining balance for the total funds, state funds. It would just show all the remaining balances. But in web grants, it seems to only show the total balance remaining.
Mhm.
And so, if it's possible to have it updated to have like a state column to show how many state funds you've used, how much is remaining. And then I also wanted to know about for uploading attachments. Do we know how large these files can be? Because as you know, sometimes NVTC gets really, really large files, and we spend a lot of time trying to break it down to 10 megabytes to make it smaller, and that takes a lot of time. So do you know, or is there a limit to web grants, or can we just upload one really large 50 megabyte file? Like, do you know that?
I don't know the upper limit off the top of my head, but it sounds like it might be helpful to actually have that in the form itself, because then you would know potentially like what your upload limit is without having to remember or recall. So that's good to know. I'm
it.
seeing, oh, sorry. Was there anything else, Brittany?
No, that is all.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate the feedback. I'm
And
seeing
we
some
do
stuff.
have,
Okay.
oh, I'm sorry, I was gonna notify you. I think you were going to that. We do have a couple of questions in the chat box.
Yes. Okay. So we have some comments for claims with 80/20 breakout. Web grants is not clear on how to enter the full amount versus the 80% grant amount. First claim was rejected and I was guided to put in 800%. Okay. So I think that's another like breakdown of state versus local costs. Mary, if I'm not representing that correctly, please let me know. Julie Kaler says we are not being notified when something has been uploaded or action is needed. I think we're supposed to be notified via email, but I'll double check on that. Should the contract be visible to all staff? We were asked to sign the contract, but I could not locate in web grants. I'm assuming it is visible only to executive director. So some clarification around user visibility, user roles is also probably helpful, it sounds like. Okay. This is all really good feedback so far. I'm going to go ahead and keep us moving. It sounds like some clarification around user roles and around kind of limitations of the system would be helpful, as well as definitely the cost breakdown and budget breakdown elements as well. Okay, if you have more details on kind of the claims process, definitely reach out to your program manager. I know many grantees have already been doing that, but again, we kind of wanted to give it's kind of an open forum for people to talk about their experiences. We'll move along to the next slide, which is about the recent grant application process. We've kind of already touched on this a little bit. So some of the potential areas for discussion on this slide are similar, but it was a very different type of process. So again, kind of navigating the system, completing forms, uploading attachments, making any updates as needed, the execution of grant agreements, things that worked well, suggestions for improvement, or future enhancement ideas that you may have on the grant application process. I'll open it up now to any feedback from grantees. Joshua, you have your hand up.
Thanks, Josh, the city of Alexandria. It's been a long while since we applied for a grant, but back in January, I just recall having to upload the exact same information multiple times at different tabs within web grants, and that became slightly cumbersome just to make sure what we said in one section matches another section. And in addition, something that we did on our own back end is we addressed the question in full in like a paragraph or so standpoint, but then when we had to put it into web grants, the limiting number of characters made details that we were trying to put in not actually available to put it in, and that was a very big hindrance from our end. So if the character limit could be increased, that seems like an easy solution, as well as only asking for the information once.
Okay, so streamlining application, and then also, again, it sounds like either expanding character limits or putting in the application kind of here's your character limit so you knew what you were working within.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, for next time, we now know to look at the character limit first, but we initially made all our answers on essentially a Word document, and then we were copying and pasting, found out that we couldn't, and then
Got it.
we had to go back and rework it a lot.
Okay, that's good to know. Appreciate that. Any other hands? All right, Eric says it seems that weird users are acting as beta testers to the new website/system. I suggest formal user testing be conducted prior to launch. Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. Any other comments on the grant application process? I know it seems like so long ago now. All right, we have another comment in the chat. Several comments. Clarity of funding opportunities. The small urban training was not ready for FY25 grant cycle, and program managers were unsure how to respond to grantees. Okay. Once the grant is executed, will all contract grant agreements be uploaded in web grants? There are several grant agreements missing for some of the previous grants. We'll check on that.
I can answer that really quickly. They are working on uploading all previous grant contracts. It just is definitely taking a little bit of time to kind of work through that process while also getting the new contracts up and running.
Thank you, Katie. All right. at this point, I'll go ahead and hand it over to Katie Miller.
All right. So kind of continuing with the web grants feedback, the final topic area we are interested in hearing from you all is on reporting. This is something that we're definitely actively working on improving right now. But thinking about what are some of your reporting needs for the system, things to consider are the reporting that was used in Olga, ways that you could better use the data that's available in web grants. And then if there's any kind of training we can provide on how to use some of the reporting capabilities as they come online. And again, it's kind of thinking about if there's anything you found that works well, any suggestions for improvement or future enhancement ideas. Yep, Robin.
All right. He's yelling I'm on mute from the other room. Okay. My auditors were just here this week and they like a report from the system that shows what was paid out. And so I had trouble with what I could get off the system unless I wasn't doing it correctly. That was really clear on what was paid out. And then, of course, once you guys break it down from state and federal, that would be great too.
Definitely, that's something we have definitely heard from a lot of people. And then in the interim, Robin, you can work with me as your program manager. You can work with your program managers to get kind of something that we can pull on the back end, kind of until we get something that's external facing.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Hey, Katie, again,
Yep.
This is Joe Bonanno. Just my comment real quick about for reporting, uploading attachments has been very difficult. So I've had to work with Kathy a lot on that. And, I've never been able to find the upload button or it's not there. And, we'd have to work through it. So if that could be fixed.
Okay. Yep, that's good to know. Scott?
Yeah, hi, this is Scott Colker from NVTC. To add to Robin's comment about the reporting, ideally, I think what we would like to see is a report that we can run showing all the drawdowns that take place during a select period and with the ending balances as well. I know that report exists now in web grants, but it's not functioning properly. It doesn't accumulate prior drawdown requests. And then also the problem with that report, or the issue with that report, is if there was no drawdown request during a period, then it will not show an ending balance. So we'd like to be able to see an ending balance of a certain date of all the grants, even if there wasn't any activity during that particular period. And also, as Robin said, having the state share would be very helpful as well in those reports.
Definitely. Thank you. Ian, I think I saw a hand up.
Yeah, hi, thanks. One of the things that it's a minor irritation, but is nonetheless there. When we do the application for the annual 5303 grant, because it auto populates the match, we find often there's some rounding errors where we have rounded up and you round down, or the other way around. And gosh, it takes ages to fiddle with those numbers to try and make them match, because we have to break it down by category. So if any one of those little categories, the rounding we do on the cents, on the pennies, is different to the rounding you do, it throws the whole thing off. And it takes hours and hours to sit and fiddle with each little one to get it to. So the auto calculation of the match is a double-edged sword, right? It maybe helps, but it also, when it comes to the pennies, it would be great if we could just get it to the dollar and forget about the pennies, because honestly, it's more waste of everyone's time than it is any use to anybody. If the dollars are down to the exact dollar amount, I feel we should just ignore the pennies, unless you explain very carefully the way this computer system is doing the rounding. Then we can copy the rounding to make sure we get it right. But it's such a lot of time for such little benefit. Frankly, you can keep the pennies. I don't need them, right? I don't care about those pennies.
Okay, yep, thank you. That's definitely something we have heard about, the rounding being different than, it has been in the past with us, and then how kind of they're calculated on the grantee side. So thank you. Gonna go to the chat unless I'm missing a hand up. Can the system show all of the grants that are expiring in 30 days, similar to how Olga showed this information? I am not sure, but we can definitely check to see if that might be a reporting function we could turn on. And then around having performance data in web grants, as Olga used to print the monthly report, that would be helpful to verify our data being submitted correctly. The Olga quarterly milestone report was helpful, and we currently do not see your quarterly report working correctly. Also really helpful to see as we try to build out the reporting functions. Thank you. I see that, some of the other program managers are answering some of these questions in the chat. So thank you, Raquel and Kyle. Olga had a summary sheet print after an upload for a claim was done, which showed the total funds available, expended to date, expended this period, and balance remaining. Then all of this was broken down by federal, state, and local, which was very helpful to compile our schedule of expenditure of federal awards for our auditor. It would be nice to have the same detailed report in web grants. Okay, that's a great, that's really helpful. Thank you. Anything else on reporting? And then, if there's kind of anything a little more general that you guys have feedback on outside of these 3 topic areas. And we really appreciate all of your feedback. We're continuously working with our IT and software team to make improvements to the system. And we hope to be able to incorporate some of this feedback to make the system more functional. Yeah, Brittany?
Yes, I have a general question. Is it possible to have web grants organize the grants that we have access to by jurisdiction? Because this might be an MVTC only issue, but because we have so many different grants for multiple jurisdictions, when we log on, we see, well, I see every single grant for everyone at one time, versus when we had Olga, there was a drop down where you can click on, I only want to see, this particular jurisdiction, and it'll just show me the grants for that jurisdiction. So I don't know if this is something that can be fixed by like maybe adding a filter button, or something that just helps you organize what you're looking at instead of having a dump of every single grant that you have access to at one time. That's all.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but that's something we could definitely look into, kind of a way to organize your grants and filter what you're looking for, definitely. Scott?
Yeah, so web grants right now is an open system with no controls whatsoever over users. Because back in Olga, we had an administrator, we were able to assign functions that particular users can do. Is that something that could be added to web grants in the future? We haven't had any issues yet so far, but as Brittany was talking about how we have so many jurisdictions involved with our account, it's a little uncomfortable knowing that anyone out there can invite anyone else into web grants.
Yeah, so as of right now, so the master user is not something that exists in web grants in the same way. We can kind of see what we might be able to do in kind of controlling some of those settings. I think the biggest thing is, who is associated with the grants is the best way to kind of control. But again, yeah, that can be changed by anyone on the team. So that's good to know. If there's nothing else, in the interest of time, I'm going to keep us moving. So moving in, and again, thank you all so much for your feedback. We've definitely taken a lot of note of this, and this is definitely, as you all know, a work in progress as we get kind of web grants up to its full functionality. So moving into grants administration, in this section, we're going to cover the kind of different things you can do in web grants, so such as executing contracts, submitting claims, time extensions, budget and scope changes, closing out grants, and de-obligations. Links, yeah. And so, as you all know, for grants management, we utilize a grants management and administration tool called Web Grants. And so all members of the agency that are involved in the grant management process should have an account in Web Grants. Agencies are responsible for adding their own new users into the system and making sure they all have the necessary associations with the grants. All organizations receiving grants must have the required documents posted in Web Grants. This is the DRBT Master Agreement, the Online Grant Agreement System Access Agreement, the organization W-9, and then for 5311 recipients only, the special warranty form and the FTA certifications insurance form. And then your DRBT program manager will work with you to make sure all of these documents are updated as needed, but this is a requirement before any contracts can be executed. All right. And so at least one individual per agency needs to have the contract signature authority in order to execute contracts. Also, something that is unique to Web Grants, and I know has kind of caused some confusion, is that in order for a user to view a grant and perform tasks, they must be related or associated as a program contact or additional program contact to each individual grant. Being associated with the organization is not enough. If you aren't associated with the individual grant, the grant will not be visible at all. And so that's something to really make sure that you have set up. I recommend setting up the additional contacts during the application phase, but this can be updated in the grant at any time under the grant information tab. It is recommended to have a backup contact if possible to avoid being locked out of a grant if someone is out of the office, or to avoid project delays during staff turnovers. And please note that no other user is permitted to use another's login credentials. All right, next we're moving on to contract execution. There have been a few major changes in the contract execution process. The grant recipient agency will now be the final executor on the contract. Contracts for urban agencies or projects that are not projects with funding that are not managed, federal funding not managed by the state, will now be automatically generated. We'll no longer wait for the agencies to send DRBT the FTA award information to request a contract. All contracts moving forward will now have a June 30th or December 31st expiration date. We're hoping this will help to create a more consistent project lifecycle schedule. Until a contract is executed, an encumbrance will be placed on the grant that will prohibit claim submission. Signing of the contract by the grant recipient agency will trigger the lifting of the encumbrance, and then you will then be able to submit any claims. Now moving into how to submit the claims for awarded projects. It's a reminder that you may only submit one reimbursement request or claim per project per month, and that these claims should be submitted at least on a quarterly basis. So kind of help you stay on track with timely submissions. When submitting a claim, please make sure that you have submitted a summary sheet listing each expense. Otherwise, your request will be denied and you will need to resubmit. All right. The very first thing that should be in your supporting documentation, as mentioned in the previous slide, is a summary page. It's crucial that the order in which you submit supporting documentation matches that the summary page. Please ensure that these supporting documents are arranged and numbered in the same order as the summary page to ensure clarity. It's important to point out in the case that only a portion of an invoice is being charged to a particular project for reimbursement, we ask that you please note the amount that is being charged and also provide an explanation. Please make sure to include all documents from contractors' invoices. For commuter assistance program grant reimbursements, you must also include a document that illustrates the work performed by each staff person being charged to the grant. And for any more information on this and any clarity, please refer to the DRBT Purple Book for additional information on supporting documentation. And I will note that the fiscal year FY25 Purple Book is up on the DRPT website for reference as well. For 5311 grantees and commuter assistant grantees that have an approved line item budget for indirect costs in their contract, you must prepare a cost allocation plan that shows the calculation of an indirect cost rate, provide an indirect cost rate approval letter from VDOT or a corresponding federal agency. In order to receive these funds, your agency must prepare an indirect cost rate proposal or use the maximum rate of 10%. CAP grantees must also ensure that costs covered within the indirect cost charge are not also being charged to another line item budget. Again, you can refer to your program manager or the Purple Book for more detail. With any reimbursements regarding travel, we follow the Commonwealth of Virginia regulations, which also follow the General Service Administration, GSA, and Internal Revenue Service, IRS, rates, rules, and regulations. This applies to both yourself and your contractors. And so any documentation that you need to submit with you or your contractors' travel reimbursement requests includes a travel summary sheet, hotel receipts, meals using the per diem is what we use, then following the GSA per diem rates, receipts for car rentals, ride hailing, parking, tolls, and then a final program for conferences that shows what meals, if any, were provided by the conference. For CAP recipients, you will need to have your DRPT program manager look over your travel plans prior to booking your hotel or any other travel-related arrangements. Something to note, you may only travel if it is included in your grant contract appendix, and you may not go over the travel, education, and training line item budgeted. Moving into time extensions. There we go. It's a requirement that time extensions must be submitted a minimum of 30 days before the end date of the project. Any extensions requested within fewer than 30 days of the project expiration date may be denied or at risk of the grant being closed before an extension can be processed administratively. It is very important to stay on top of these. Although it is not encouraged to wait to ask for extension requests for projects. There are some limits. We ask you to engage in conversations with your program manager if there are projects that have encountered any challenges along the way, so that can be on their radar and that you might be coming in for a time extension within the reasonable time frame. As a reminder, you are only permitted one time extension per project, and extensions may only be granted for a maximum of a 12-month period of time. We will ask for a detailed explanation of the need for an extension, a new project schedule, as well as updated project milestones. Please note that transit and CAP operating grants cannot be extended. Moving on to budget and scope changes. Again, with this, it's really important to engage in conversations with your program manager as soon as possible if you plan to submit any changes. A scope and budget change request will be submitted through the contract amendment module in web grants. We do want to emphasize that a scope change may be allowed if the requested change does not materially alter the original intent of the project. This can include increasing or decreasing the quantity of something, when changing from hardware to software or vice versa, changing the revenue vehicle type, going from a 40-foot transit bus to a 29-foot transit bus. But for all merit scored and awarded projects, any changes must be rescored. And there's no guarantee that a budget or scope amendment will be approved. All right, for commuter assistance programs, we ask that you follow the same process of first talking with your DRPT program manager so that they may assist you with the appropriate form. Line item budget change requests are not submitted through the contract amendment module in web grants. Your DRPT program manager will send you a change form via email to complete and sign. Your DRPT program manager will send the approval or denial of the request via email. Line item budget requests may not result in a total budget increase. An important note, failure to obtain pre-approval from your DRPT program manager for a line item budget transfer or exceeding a line item budget may result in denial of claims for additional expenses for the line item. Moving into deobligation and project closeout. There are two ways to deobligate remaining funds for a project and close it out in web grants. The first way is to submit a final reimbursement request. This must be submitted within 90 days of the final expenditure or the project end date, whichever occurs first. It's your responsibility to double check with your contractor or vendor to make sure they have provided you with their final reimbursable invoice. When submitting the final claim, please select the option to state that this is the final claim. The other way to deobligate project is to send your program manager a correspondence on the grant within web grants that you wish to deobligate or close out. You can also send an email to your program manager and they will include this as documentation in web grants to close out, and they'll go ahead and close out the grant. Projects with a zero balance will be automatically closed out. All right, any questions on the grant administration section so far? And, as always, if things come up later, as you review the PowerPoint or the Purple Book, reach out to your program manager and they'll be happy to help. All right. So next up in the presentation is asset management. We'll get into vehicle disposals, transit asset management, TAM plans, and performance data. For vehicles funded using 5311 funds, DRVT maintains vehicle titles for the duration of the vehicle's useful life. When the vehicle has reached the end of its useful life, agencies may request the title and lien be released by DRVT. To do so, you'll need to send DRVT a written request to have the title be released so that the vehicle may be sold and or otherwise disposed. The title will then be released once we can verify that the vehicle has reached the end of its useful life. For vehicles that have a fair market value greater than $5,000, the subrecipient will be able to keep a portion of the funds. They can keep $5,000 plus the percentage of its local share above $5,000. The remaining federal share must be returned to FTA. And your DRPT program manager will provide you with a worksheet to help calculate this amount and guide you through the return of proceeds process. All right. If you have a 5311 funded vehicle that is not needed any longer for the original intended purpose and the vehicle is not past its useful life, DRPT will work with you to have the vehicle transferred to another eligible subrecipient. The transit agency transferring their vehicle to another will be reimbursed for local interest at the fair market value of the vehicle by the new owner. In a rare case where DRPT may not be able to find an eligible subrecipient for the vehicle, so long as DRPT and FTA are both in agreement, the vehicle can be sold by the original subrecipient. Remember that if you dispose of any equipment before the end of its useful life, it requires the prior approval by DRPT. We will notify FTA of all vehicle disposals by subrecipients. And then the transit asset management or TAM plan is another important part of asset management. TAM plans are an FTA requirement that applies to all recipients of Chapter 53 funds that either own, operate, or manage capital assets used in providing public transit. The TAM plan is intended to be a tool that helps transit agencies in assessing the current condition of its capital assets, determining what the condition and performance of its assets should be if they are not already in a state of good repair, identifying the unacceptable risks, including safety risks in continuing to use an asset that is not in a state of good repair, and deciding how to best balance and prioritize reasonably anticipated funds towards improving asset condition and achieving a sufficient level of performance within those means. Slide. DRPT sponsors a group plan for all interested Tier 2 providers. A Tier 2 agency is an agency that does not operate fixed guideway transit and or has less than 100 in peak service vehicles across all fixed route or one non-fixed route mode. This summer, DRPT is analyzing and reassessing the required asset performance targets. By October, DRPT will provide revised TAM performance targets for federal fiscal year 25, but we expect that the targets will remain largely the same. The current Tier 2 TAM plan will be in effect until September 30th, 2026. In the fall of 2025, DRPT will begin the federal fiscal year 26 through 29 TAM plan with outreach to transit agencies and MPOs beginning in the winter of 2025. Tier 2 agencies are encouraged to review and consult the plan when planning their state of good repair replacement schedules. Next slide. This year, approximately 25% of Tier 2 facilities will receive an on-site detailed assessment conducted by a consultant. Assessments will be conducted mid-August to September. If you were selected to receive an on-site assessment for this cycle, you'll be hearing from the consultant soon to schedule their visit. Any agencies that are not receiving an on-site detailed assessment will not be required to complete a high-level self-assessment. This is a change from years past. Then moving on to performance data as a part of asset management. Anyone who receives operating assistance funding from DRPT is required to submit ridership numbers, vehicle revenue hours, and vehicle revenue miles in DRPT's performance data reporting SharePoint. This needs to be done on or before the last business day of each month for the previous month's activity. So for example, the deadline to submit July's data is the last business day in August. So for this year, that would be Thursday, August 31st. Performance metrics need to be entered into SharePoint by mode. Grantees must attach backup documentation that supports the metrics being reported. For the subrecipients who are required to submit annual passenger miles traveled, please make sure to do this on or before December 15th annually. One more note, monthly performance metrics are posted on DRPT's Open Data Portal. Through the Open Data Portal, the data you submit is now public, so please submit the information accurately and on time. Next slide. Grantees may amend previously submitted performance data in SharePoint if errors are discovered. DRPT asks transit agencies to complete performance data amendments in SharePoint no later than December 31st for the previous fiscal year. For example, the fiscal year 24 amendments are due by December 31st, 2024. In January, DRPT transit planners and program managers will conduct a check on all performance data submitted for fiscal year 24 to flag variances of 10% or greater. If a variance is identified, the grantee must describe the reason for the variance. Grantees will hear from their program manager in mid-January to verify fiscal year 24 data and describe any variances. Slide. This slide shows the top findings in DRPT compliance reviews. As you can see, by a wide margin, the top findings are that of performance data not being properly supported. The second most common finding are issues pertaining to vehicle inventory. We will be having another training specifically related to vehicle inventory and asset management in September. We'll have the date for that at the end of the presentation. I'm going to pause here for a second for questions. Grace Stankus is on the line to provide answers to questions around the TAM plan, asset management, and performance data. Yep, Darius, I see your hand up.
Good morning, this is Queenie. I have a question. On the monthly report, the performance data that we send in, it's always been the 15th of the month, to have it in by the 15th of the month. That's changed to August 30th now?
Hi, Queenie, this is Grace. I'm not sure when the 15th of the month deadline was decided, but as of December 1st of last year, we kind of stuck to the last business day of the month for the previous month's reporting.
Okay. I have
I know
another
there's been
question.
some confusion around that, but we're trying to clear that up.
Okay. I guess my other question I'll ask off later about, I have, some vehicles that hasn't been put into, trams.
Yep. I think that we can talk about that one offline because that's
Okay.
very specific to Petersburg. But yep, I'll follow up with you.
Thank you.
on that. Yep.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right. Well, with that, I'm going to now hand it back over to Sarah to cover commuter assistance program performance data and the remaining sessions. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. As Katie mentioned, next up is commuter assistance program performance data. Next slide, please. So for our commuter assistance programs, we require recipients to submit ride match requests, employer sales calls and meetings, tabling events, new employers with transit and van pool benefits, as well as total employers with transit and van pool benefits, and total employers with telework or hybrid schedules. That all needs to be submitted on a monthly basis in SharePoint. For van pool data, for those 4 agencies that submit van pool data, you should know who you are. You submit in SharePoint new and total van pools and van pool ridership, revenue miles, and passenger miles. If your agency starts reporting van pool data to NTD, please contact your program manager. You might need to start reporting van pool data to DRPT too. Just a reminder as well, you must submit your performance data and source data reports by the last business day of each month for the previous month in SharePoint. So for example, August data is due by September 30th. The source data reports are NTD reports for van pool data and ride matching system and employer contact management system reports. Some van pool data and commuter assistance performance data may be posted on the open data portal, so the data must be entered timely and accurately. I will pause here for any questions you might have. Chris Arabia is on the line to provide answers.
We do have a question that came in the chat.
From Caitlin, can the agency still submit changes to the TAM plan, or are you asking agencies to wait? This sounds like it would be a question for Grace potentially. Grace, if you're still on.
Hi, Caitlin. I am not sure about this, but I'm going to find out and I will circle back with you.
Thank you. All right, we'll move it along. Our next topic is Transit Strategic Plan and Transit Development Plan updates. Oh, let's pause for a second. Who is the best contact to reach out with questions about accessing performance SharePoint? I believe that would be Grace as well.
Yeah, that's correct. And if it's transit related, that would be me, or commuter assistance, that would be Chris Arabia.
Any other questions? I don't want to rush the question section. Okay. As a reminder, TSPs and TDPs ensure that transit services plan to meet the mobility needs of communities throughout the state. Last year, the annual update letter was upgraded to a joint quarterly meeting with your program manager and a transit planner. This year, you can expect that joint quarterly meeting to be held between fall 2024 and January 20th, 2025. The discussion generates elements of the annual update letter and ensures that the annual update is complete ahead of the FY26 grant application cycle. A template will be provided in advance to help facilitate a good discussion around your plans. We will now pause for a moment for any questions. I believe Tiffany Dubinsky is on the line to answer those. All right, we'll keep going. Next up is procurement updates. We will cover the general planning contract, prime and sub requirements, and state bus contracts. So for those who don't know, DRPT has a bench contract to provide a wide variety of transit planning services. This bench is available not only to DRPT, but all transit agencies, MPOs, human service agencies, and commuter assistance operators in Virginia. The 5 consultants listed on this slide also have agreements in place with subcontractors to extend their transit planning subject matter expertise to meet your needs. Grantees who use DRPT's bench work directly with the prime consultants. This means that the grantee, not DRPT, is responsible for billing and issuing purchase orders. Next slide, please. Also, if you intend on working directly with a subcontractor, you have to go through the prime. FTA and subsequently DRPT require prompt payment. This means that the primes must pay the subcontractors no later than 30 days after receiving payment from a grantee. This applies to both DBE and non-DBE subs. Grantees are responsible for compliance and documentation of prompt payment of subcontractors. 5311 grantees must document all subcontractor payments. Generally speaking, when working with subcontractors on our bench, please work closely with your DRPT program manager. State bus contract update. So here's a reminder of the buses we have on state contract, a variety of vehicles and propulsion types. Rolling stock contracts currently include raised roof vans, body on chassis buses, low floor body on chassis buses, and low floor wheelchair accessible minivans. We also have 12-year heavy-duty transit buses, including 29-foot, 35-foot, and 40-foot Gillig buses. For New Flyer, we have 35-foot, 40-foot, and 60-foot articulated buses, as well as MCI motor coaches. Next slide, please. DRPT strongly encourages awarded recipients not to wait to order your vehicles. The longer you wait to order your vehicles, the greater the likelihood that prices will increase, which may lead to either 1, a reduction in the number of vehicles you're able to purchase, and or 2, potential delays in delivery. For our 5311 partners, it's very important that you notify your program manager before placing your order. If you're buying vehicles, please remember that you must notify your program manager so that we can run a transit vehicle manufacturer report or a TVM. As part of managing rolling stock procurement contracts, DRPT has done a lot of the legwork for you, including the pre-award oversight requirements, Buy America certification, Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standards certification, Purchasers Requirement certification, etc. However, it's still your responsibility when buying these vehicles off the state contract to comply with local procurement rules, as well as analyze pricing to ensure you're getting a fair and reasonable price. Whether you are a rural system or a small or large urban system, you are required to conduct all post-delivery oversight requirements, which include Buy America, FMVSS, Purchasers Requirement Certification, including in the inspection of the vehicle received. The manufacturer should provide you with the post-delivery content, but you as an agency are required to review this info and certify that it meets federal regulations for rolling stock vehicles. All of the rolling stock contracts and templates of agency certification of post-delivery oversight are available on the DRPT website, and there's a QR code and a direct link here. I've got Avery on the line to provide answers to any procurement or vehicle questions. All right, we've got a question from Cynthia. Does DRPT ensure that all federal clauses are included in the rolling stock procurements? Avery?
Yes, hi Cynthia. Thanks for the question. Yes, we do. We constantly are analyzing and making sure that we have updated clauses. We also encourage the use, as most of you I'm sure do if you've managed your own procurements, of what's called Procurement Pro. It's put out by National RTAP. They have done a really good job of maintaining a database of needed clauses. So if you are ever unsure if there's a question that comes up about it, we encourage you to also do a spot check using Procurement Pro.
We've got another question from Marcus Moore for the CAT performance data. So Chris, this is for you. There are category splits for transit and van pool benefits. In most cases, there are no designation of one or the other by employers, and just clarification that a program has been implemented and whether it's direct or pre-tax. The use is determined by the participating staff commuter. So is there a suggestion on how you prefer us to enter this data for your required criteria? Chris, are you still in line to take a look at this question? Yes, great.
I'm here. Yes. Yes. So I do know that some employers in the past have done just transit benefits because they were not aware that they could actually include van pool benefits. So it's good just to find out when you're working with employers, just to make sure. If they're doing both, great. You just check, both. But there are some instances where they only do one. So that's why we ask for both, just to confirm.
Thank you, Chris. Brittany asks in the chat, may you share the link to Procurement Pro, Avery?
Absolutely. We'll drop it in the chat. Thank you, Brittany.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, keep them coming. These are really good questions. Next up, we've got the communications update. Our communications team here at DRPT is headed up by Andy Wright, who is our Chief of External Affairs and Strategic Initiatives. Andy oversees a team of creative, marketing, communications, legislative, legal, and policy specialists. Our communications team's primary purpose is to help tell the story of what you all do in the Commonwealth to improve people's lives through public transportation. They want to help in any way they can, whether that be with assisting with press releases, generating social media content, or helping plan public events. Contact Andy. His email is here on the slide if you're interested in partnering with the DRPT communications team. Also, we've got another bench available to use. This one is for your communications and marketing needs. More details are available on the DRPT website, or you can contact your program manager for additional info. We're at our next break for questions. Andy is online to answer your questions for communications. All right. Next slide. We've got our second to last topic for today is engineering updates, focusing on construction project planning. Alan Saunders manages our statewide engineering program and is based in the Richmond office. Alan has been assisting the progression of projects from feasibility to construction and has also been working very closely with VDOT to streamline transit shelter policies and procedures. And Bethel Kefulo, who's based out of DRPT's Northern Virginia office here in Alexandria. She supports many of Virginia's largest transit facility engineering and construction projects, administers DRPT's construction project program management portal, and is focusing on low-no emission infrastructure, including EV charging infrastructure. Our DRPT engineering team is a valuable resource and can assist with all the items on this slide and more. For construction project estimates, the more detail, the better. From bus stops, large transit maintenance facilities, vehicle charging solutions, the engineering team reviews cost estimates to ensure they are comprehensive and consider all project development and delivery activities, including NEPA, if applicable, fees for architects, engineers, and construction management, design and construction, temporary facilities for fleet maintenance and operations, and sufficient contingencies for inflation, escalation, risks. With sufficient notice, our engineering team will help applicants prepare cost estimates. More complex projects may require preliminary engineering to ensure that estimates are comprehensive. This is really important. For FY26 major capital merit applications for construction project funding, applicants must follow VDOT Smart Scale cost estimate guidelines, including their cost estimate workbook. We're recommending the same approach for minor enhancements and TRIP capital projects. The engineering team is here to help you out with this. Transit shelters. If you are installing a transit stop, please let your DRPT program manager know so they can connect you with Alan or Bethel here at DRPT. Transit stops on VDOT right-of-way may require additional approvals, permits, and engineering plans. I won't go through all of this, but suffice to say, if you need assistance, we can help. And if you aren't sure you need assistance, we can help. Let us know. This is our final questions break for today's presentation. I've got Alan Saunders available to answer questions for the engineering portion, but if you have other questions about anything else discussed today, now is your time to ask. In the chat, we have a question from Josh for Andy Wright. Are there planned webinars overviewing the DRPT campaigns that are being developed and deployed, such as connecting communities? Andy, are you in line for that?
I'm not sure if he is, but I can answer that question. As of right now, there aren't any planned webinars, but I can get back to you after talking to our marketing head of marketing. But we did send out a toolkit not too long ago. It was either last week or sometime before that. And if you did not receive it, I'll be happy to send it your way.
Thank you, JLo. Multitasking, running the whole webinar and also answering questions. Any
gotta
other
do what you
questions?
gotta do.
I appreciate it. Any other questions? All right. We'll have time for questions at the end as well if needed. Wrap up and next steps is our last section. So next slide, please. Here are the dates for future webinars and then also kind of upcoming deadlines through February 2025. September 4th is the 5310 Human Services Post-Award webinar. September 18th is the TransAmp training webinar that Katie mentioned earlier today. September 30th is the last day to submit claims for grants that expired on June 30th. Please don't wait until September 30th to submit those claims. Later this fall, we'll be holding the FY26 grant application workshop. More details are forthcoming on that. December 1st is the deadline for pre-applications for all major capital expansion projects. This is really important. So last year, DRPT introduced a mandatory pre-application for all major expansion projects that had a construction component. For FY26, all applicants seeking major expansion funding will need to submit a pre-app. So this includes all project types: construction, qualifying vehicle expansion, technology projects, etc. The pre-application will be very similar to last year, but it will be accessible in web grants and will ultimately be tied to the full application that's due on February 1st, 2025. If you have any questions, please contact your DRPT program manager. December 1st is also the opening date for FY26 grant applications, and February 1st, 2025 is the FY26 grant application deadline for transit and CAP programs. I know that's not on the slide, but any other last questions before we close out for today? Okay. For anyone that has not absorbed this entire presentation right now, here are your top 3 takeaways. These are your top 3 tips for success. Number 1, the Purple Book has lots of information on how to administer your DRPT grants. We've referred to it several times throughout today. The QR code here will take you to a direct link to that page on our website. If you have any questions or concerns, contact your DRPT program manager at any time. We are here to help you out. And then 3, we will send a follow-up email with a PDF of this presentation and a link to the webinar recording on our YouTube channel shortly. Next slide. That is the end of our webinar. We appreciate your time and participation today, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.